Hi, and welcome to this week's Zygo Network Renewable Roundup. I'm Russell, and joining me this week is Tristan Dorman. Tristan is an independent clean tech consultant, and he's got a lot of experience in battery storage and solar, which he's going to talk to me about today. If anything Tristan talks about today is of interest, remember you can tender your on-site solar and battery needs through the Zygo Network platform, and of course you can reach out to us or Tristan to find out more. I think this is going to be an exciting conversation, so let's get stuck in. Tristan, welcome. Thanks for joining me this week.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. For those of you listening who don't know Tristan's an independent clean tech consultant. I've known Tristan a long time, but I'd say he's got pretty much a decade of experience around battery storage, solar, EV, and he's been working around manufacturers and energy businesses in that kind of like sales, product marketing area. Is that a fair description, Tristan?
Yeah, absolutely. That sums it up. Yeah, we go way back, don't we? To our energy days. I've got a fair bit of experience in renewable energy and then manufacturers with clean tech too. So it's great to be talking to you today.
Super. Yeah, thanks very much. So, Tristan, you agreed to be my guest this this week because we were going to talk about commercial battery storage and solar and EV. So I think it's quite a hot topic. A lot of people are talking about, batteries and on-site and everything. What do you think is driving businesses to look at batteries on site right now?
Well, I think there are sort of probably 3 or 4 key bits to it. First one being around sort of business certainty. So everyone knows about the energy volatility that's going on at the moment. Makes it really difficult to budget for businesses, but also it can cause problems with the business operations as well if you don't know what's going on. Also, the grid instability sort of pitches into that. So while we're not quite as bad as Ireland, which is really facing regular blackouts, we've got really aging infrastructure. And when there's the slight concern around the continuity of the energy supplies, companies like, I don't know, data centers, hospitals, cold storage companies, they just can't have any interruption in that. So it's really important to have that in there, to have that sort of continuity of supply in there. Which is why batteries really come to their fore for that. Another thing is prices have come down significantly, so the payback and the ROI on that is hugely decreased. So just to give you an example, 10 years ago, batteries and solar prices were 75 to 90% more expensive. And just over 2025, the prices came down by 45%. So it just really adds to that sort of commercial discussion around getting this in place. And the system costs have come down and the installation costs come down. So just all that whole bit is just significantly lower, which makes it a much easier financial decision for businesses. Then you've got the tech maturing, so it's more reliable, it's safer, it's smaller, it's easier to install. And then there's been a real shift in thinking I've found with businesses from more of a sustainability perspective through to a more economic view when they're looking at this as a potential investment.
It's really interesting because I think when I looked, if you'd asked me, I'd have said, well, the sort of add-on charges for energy are really high, and you want to avoid importing if you can. Particularly, you want to avoid importing over peaks in those so-called red zones. You combine that, then I think, with what I sort of knew about battery prices falling. I was kind of thinking, it makes sense. And on a domestic level, I thought about it myself. I'm literally like, yes, if I'm going to have solar panels, I'm going to have a battery because I want to, I want to maximize the output. But actually, what you've said there, and then it's also about that security of supply and operability. And again, you kind of think about it, you think, well, if you need that power, and there are questions, and I know there are because I've dealt with businesses in this part of the world who say, much as we don't like it, the supply can be all over the place at times. if you need it in certain industries and it's critical to your success, then I
Mm.
guess you have to maybe consider what else can do it. And if it's getting cheaper and easier, suddenly it begins to look like a good idea.
Yeah, and historically, it's been sort of diesel generators have been providing that. But with the sustainability sort of drive and the drive to net zero generation in 2030 by the government, that's just not more from sort of ESG and that sort of thing. It's just you need to move to a more cleaner source, and solar and battery just makes all sense really with that.
Yeah, it does. And do you think there've been changes in the energy market that have helped that? I mean, obviously you've talked about battery costs coming down, and I'm talking about the sort of add-on charges. Are there any other changes you think in the solar and storage market that have helped?
Well, there's government focus on it as well, isn't there? And there's assistance with some policies that have been introduced or are being introduced. So you've obviously got the Warm Homes Grant, there's sort of for domestic companies, but sorry, domestic dwellings. But then there's the Future Home Standard, and for larger businesses, ESOS Phase 4 is coming along. I think that needs to be audits need to be due in at the end of December, on the 26th of December. So a nice little Christmas present there for many businesses. And you've also got the VAT rate coming down. It's currently 0% up until the 30th of March in 2027, and then it's reverting back to 5%. So I think businesses are seeing all these sort of financial drivers and wanting to get on board pretty sharpish, really. And it also looks like that the prices of panels are going up now because Chinese are removing their state subsidies of battery and solar panels, and so as a consequence, prices are going up quite significantly. I was talking to a wholesaler contact of mine earlier on this year, and he was saying it'd gone up probably 20 or 30% already within the last 3 months. So it's really going up quite significantly, which is another reason to get on board now because you can save money relatively rather than waiting till later.
It's interesting because I think when the subsidy ended and the change to taxation in China, and people were saying, oh well, it might put prices up, panel prices and stuff up by 5 to 10%. But I think what you're hearing is that and probably, let's be fair, other factors, because transportation costs will be higher, material costs are going to be higher, and everything else that's going on, is actually there's a significant potential for increase in some areas, which is going to make it hard, which could in future make it harder. So bearing all that in mind then, where would you say then that batteries can actually create solid financial value for a business?
Yeah, well, over and above the stuff we've talked about already, obviously reducing your energy bills is a huge thing. So putting solar on your roof can reduce your energy bills significantly. We're looking at sort of between 30 and 70% by doing that. And also it's sort of with the battery, we add the battery in, then that increases that to up to 90% of your energy usage can be covered by your solar and your battery. So that makes a massive difference to sort of operational expenditure for a business. Also, the sort of the usage of the solar. If you just have a solar panels, you're going to use it during the day as you've got the generation curve, and any excess is sold back to the grid at a rate less than you're going to be buying it from them. So you just essentially you're losing money by not capturing that energy that's being generated over and above your consumption. So the key with batteries is to stick that excess into a battery, and then you can use that either side to sort of fill the valleys, as it were. So it really just maximizes the usage of your solar generation. So you can do peak shaving and valley filling, as they call it. So you're using the battery for the peak consumption to reduce those charges where it's expensive, and then you can charge the battery off peak and sort of consume that during the day. So it sort of is a double whammy with the savings. There are sort of obviously there are costs involved in installing this. So you need to look at that from a capex perspective. But there are sort of fully funded models available to you. So where you don't pay anything, you just get cheap electricity, and there are quite a few ways of cutting that. So it could be that you don't have any capital expenditure business at all. You just reduce your costs on energy, which is got to be a good thing for many people if you don't have that ability to own the assets. But I think it could be going that way anyway, into a more of a funded model, and people paying for it, like people pay for their meter as part of your bill. You don't think about it, do you? Because it's just part of it. Whereas I think it could go to a point where solar is paid for as a monthly cost, rather than having it up and down depending on how much usage you've done. But on top of that, you can use solar and battery as an additional revenue stream, you can sell excess back to the grid, but as I mentioned before, cheaply. But if you can get involved in the flexibility markets, doing demand side response, where basically you reduce or increase your consumption depending on what's required by the grid, to help sort of balance it. And you could also provide capacity to the grid by using your batteries, and you can get paid for that, and paid quite nicely for it as well. And then on the other side is you've also got capacity markets. So that's probably for bigger installations, sort of 5 megawatts plus. You're looking if you want to get involved in capacity markets. But again, significant financial incentives to do that. Last year, I was working for a large battery and inverter manufacturer that did EV chargers as well. And I was looking at the large batteries that we did, which 260 kilowatts was the largest battery. You can have up to 2.5 meg in total of that as a modular system. And I spoke to Engie, actually, one of our old colleagues, and we were modelling how quickly that would pay back on the capacity market. And it was worked out that a small system, just one battery, would take about 2 years to pay back. And that small one battery, 260 kilowatts, is enough for sort of a mid-sized commercial operation, or a small manufacturing operation. So it's amazing how quickly you can pay it back. And then after that, it's just pure margin. So there's lots of financial incentives to get battery.
It's interesting. I think it's fair to say there are a lot of models, there are models in the market now. I think it's a lot of interest. I think I've seen quite a few that, if you, as you say, fully funded. So as a business, you can rock up and you say, fine, stick it up on the roof, put the batteries in. What do I buy the energy from you? And everything it's produced, you buy at a certain rate. And then, as you say, if you've got the battery, you can optimize it. You say, well, I don't want, I might be able to consume all of that peak energy, in the middle of the day, peak generation, but actually I'm going to squirrel it away and use it over the evening peak, because that's going to, when it's making the most money, and attempt to buy market power during the day when it's cheaper, for example. Maybe even through the hourly market or whatever. We see other ones where, where people do come along and say, actually, we'll invest ourselves, because then although we've got to put the money up and there's costs and everything, if we get it right, as you say, the payback's reasonably quick, the risk is reasonably low, and then after that, we're selling an asset ourselves where we're making the money out of it. Yes, we've got to do maintenance and stuff. I do think the danger sometimes is that people feel that they don't always understand it, and therefore it does, as you say, it makes sense to get the facts and to get the advice. There are consultants available, and there's this information available on platforms like ours, for example. And people can get into it. So it's pretty interesting. But I think what you're saying to me is, and this was a question I had about why the battery and solar over just solar. I think what we're kind of saying is that you've got no control with the solar. You get what you get. And actually, it's not always, although it's green and it's cheaper and it might offset your load, when it doesn't, I think you said it, you're paying for something that you can't get the full value back at because
Yeah.
it's sunny and the market price is low. And even if you get something like my export guarantee, you're not guaranteed to get what you need back for your export.
Yeah, not just that, it speeds up your ROI as well on if you have a battery on there, it speeds up your return on investment by between 20 to 30%. So it just makes a big difference to the bottom line.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So, what would you say are the three things then, if someone's got a business and they're considering investing in a battery system, what three things would you encourage them to consider before they did it?
Yeah, good question. I mean, there's loads of things to think about, isn't there? But it's so you're narrowing me down to three, which is making it challenging. I've got to say, Russ. But
I thought I'd put you on the spot,
can.
Tristan. Pick your best three.
Okay. Obviously, upfront costs are something to consider. So a small system would be sort of, I don't know, 15 to 20k, 25k, somewhere on there. A large system, you can spend 200k plus easily enough. With no matter what size the system is, the payback's generally around sort of 5 to 10 years that you'd be looking at. But you need to obviously consider the potential capital impact that has on your business. But as you said, and as we've spoken about, there are different ways of doing that, and there are fully funded models available which can remove that as a consideration, but something worth thinking about. Your usage profile is worth thinking about as well. So sort of high usage businesses like manufacturing, cold storage, sort of operations that are open 24/7. They're the ones that benefit the most from having a battery as well as solar from that. And think about your future requirements is a key thing as well. So when you're looking at the battery you're going for, generally speaking, energy usage is only increasing across the board, isn't it? And so thinking about how that might be expanded over the course of the future years coming up. So thinking about modular batteries, so ones where you can add on extra battery storage and capacity very easily. That can save you a lot of money in the longer run. They might be slightly more expensive up front, but in the longer run, it works out a lot cheaper. So they're my three. But DNO approvals is a fourth one, just as extra because it can take a while to get through that.
Right, of course, because you can't just necessarily stick it on there because you're going to need to connect. You have a connection. Sorry, as a business, you'll have a connection which will typically be import only, and if you want to export, you're going to need to make sure that you can do that.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, it's a good thing. Okay, that's interesting. So, as a last thing before we wrap up, Tristan.
Yeah.
I've seen this market grow over the last few years, and it's getting interesting. I think it started out, shall we say, as a mixture of domestic, right, based on the fit, which we knew and loved, and then whoa, look how much money's in fit, and they were throwing panels everywhere, and then obviously that was trimmed and it's and then ended. So that stopped it, but still people are getting people are getting the benefits because the price has come down. You can see that. But then it seemed to be it was probably the other end of the scale where people were saying, I need to do something quite big. And they weren't really doing batteries, we were doing solar. And what I'm seeing now is a bit more the move into the middle ground and definitely inclusion of batteries. As someone who's a bit closer to it, where would you see the market going, you think, in the next few years?
Yeah, I think inclusion of batteries will become standard procedure. That's just going to be a sort of non-negotiable standard part of the installation, just to sort of mitigate sort of the grid constraints and you maximise the ROIs and all the good stuff we've talked about already. It'll just be standard. I think there's a projection that I was reading a Cornwall Insights report. And there's it projected a massive increase in demand of up to 50% just this year in solar and battery. And that's sort of driven by the government incentives that have been put in place and all the things we mentioned before about how things are changing. So the government clean power that's needed by by 2030, the Future Home Standard, ESOS, all that stuff. And so that's really driving demand significantly. So there's going to be a lot more of that. As I mentioned, panel prices are going up. There's going to be more focus on of solar and battery as a critical operational resource. So looking at resilience, really. The energy price stability is a bit of a problem, and so people are looking to try and smooth that out. The grid resilience and then demand that's driven by sort of AI and data centers is going to again sort of just hoover up capacity on the grid and make it more difficult for businesses to get what they need and make sure they have what they need to deliver their business day to day. So I think they're key things. And yeah, more funded models will probably become available over time as well. And then on the technical side of things, I reckon batteries are going to change. There'll be more chemistries available, more efficient, smaller, denser power to size ratios, and quicker to install. So everything will get easier and quicker and cheaper and more fantastic, and we'll dance into the sunset, singing songs and being joyful.
Fabulous. Wow. That seems like an exceedingly good place to wrap it up for today. Tristan, thank you very much for joining me and sharing the benefit of your experience. I really appreciate it.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Russ. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you.